Revelation chapter 13, beginning in verse 1. This is John the Apostle writing. And he says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea." And he has these visions, various visions. Here's one of them. "And I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and his great authority." The dragon there, for the record, is Satan. I believe it's at this point that Satan possesses the Antichrist. Verse 3, "And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon, who gave authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast, saying, 'Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?' And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies," or lies, "and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. That's 3.5 years. And then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. And all who dwell on the earth will worship him," the beast, "whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear to hear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." Let's stop there for now. And first thing I want to address here, I'm going to address several questions tonight, all right, from this passage. Number one is this: who is the Antichrist? Now, that's an excellent question. John, in 1 John, he gives us some definitions or some ideas. "Little children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard, the Antichrist is coming. Even now, many Antichrists have already come, by which we know that it is the last hour." So a few things to think about here is what is the last hour, which I'll get into in a couple of minutes, but also what is the Antichrist, or who is the Antichrist, because John says the Antichrist is coming. Even now, many Antichrists have come. When you see the term an Antichrist or the Antichrist, John is referring to the beast that we just read about in Revelation chapter 13. The beast here is the Antichrist that John is writing about there. Since Christ first came, Satan's opposition has increased in intensity not seen prior. Prior to the birth of Christ, you had the opposition. You had antichrists or anti-messiahs, you could say, that existed. There was Pharaoh. There was Haman. There was Antiochus Epiphanes in the centuries before Christ. And there were Caesars before Christ came. And there were really, really wicked Roman Caesars after Christ came, and even during the time that Christ was here. And then you fast forward through the centuries, and we have the Mussolinis and the Hitlers and the Stalins and the Pol Pots, and you can go right on down the list. The Antichrist. But it's quite interesting. If you were to look at Hitler, I find it especially fascinating. If I was alive back in the days of Hitler, I would be wondering if he was the Antichrist. I'd be looking at my Bible because of some of the things he did. The way he used his propaganda, his pompous words, and his mouth, and his charisma, and all of these attributes that he had, plus how he was able to swiftly move into other nations and annihilate them, and his pursuit in eliminating all of the Jews. When I look at that, however, I know that Hitler was not the Antichrist because things didn't develop in the end the way that they will biblically with the beast or the Antichrist when he comes. I do believe this, however, that Satan has always had an Antichrist somewhere in each generation, or at least someone that he could possess. Satan doesn't know the day or the hour either. But Satan knows what the Bible says. He knows the signs of the times, but he also knows he could possess somebody. If this is it, if this is the time that God has determined, then I want to always have somebody ready. So throughout the centuries, there's always been these people, these individuals that have been very antichrist-like. Now the term antichrist, it means against Christ. Anti-against. This isn't hard to figure out. So John is making it known that there will be an antichrist here in Revelation chapter 13 that comes, verse 1, then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. He lets us know that there's an antichrist that is coming, but also, John let us know in 1 John, the passage that I just showed you, is that there are antichrists, plural, little antichrist, and then the one big antichrist. With the antichrist plural, there are the Mussolinis and the Hitlers throughout the centuries. However, there are just people who are against Christ. College professor can be an antichrist when he is against Christ. There are some people that you come across that are just, for whatever reason, they just have this I hate Jesus thought. And not every, a lot of people are just not religious or not really into Christianity or whatever. But there are people out there that we come across, it's that antichrist spirit. But John said, it is the last hour. And there are antichrists, there's an antichrist. What did he mean, it is the last hour? Because John wrote that almost 2,000 years ago. So that is a really long hour by our terminology, isn't it? So what does he mean by the last hour? Well, the last hour refers to our present age. It encompasses the time between the first coming of Christ and it concludes at his second coming. We would also call the last hour the age of grace. It is the day in which we currently live, the age of grace. Christ came, he ascended into heaven. Peter said, a day with the Lord is as 1,000 years as a day. So in a sense, it's the last hour. It's been 2 days, 2,000 years ago. So 2 days since Jesus ascended into heaven. When you look at it with the age of grace, it's almost like we live in some kind of Twilight Zone time warp. God put everything on hold in the first century. The Roman Empire was in charge back then. The Jews and Christians were being persecuted. You get to the tribulation period, guess what? The Roman Empire is in charge again, and Jews are going to be persecuted again. But right now we're in that last hour. From the time Christ rose from the dead and ascended into heaven and until he comes again, it is that time frame. Now also note this. The Antichrist is, just for the record, is a he. A he. The Bible is very clear on that. Whenever mentioned in the Bible, the Antichrist or the beast is always spoken of in the masculine. In the book of Daniel, he will confirm a covenant with the Jews, with the many, right? In the book of Revelation, where we just read, Revelation chapter 13, it's he, him, his, right here, verse 1 of Revelation chapter 13. On his horns 10 crowns, on his heads a blasphemous name. He has, his feet were like the feet of bear, his throne, his power, and I saw one of his heads. So masculine, whenever the Antichrist or the beast is mentioned in the Bible, always in the masculine. So guess what? I know Hillary Clinton is running for president. I'm going to set the record straight. That's just a picture. That is public domain. So isn't that a great picture? So whatever. She is not, I'm going to tell you right now, right? Because you'll hear it. Chris will say, I know she's the Antichrist. You'll see it on some blog site. I know listen, she can't be the Antichrist. So you got to reason through these things, all right? Does it make sense? Fair enough? Okay, so I'm going to help you reason through some things tonight. If anybody says this woman is the Antichrist, just listen to somebody else. She might be the next president, but she's not the Antichrist. Man, you guys are, listen, I'm just stating facts. I don't know what's going to happen. Gosh. What do you think it was, town hall meeting? What is this? The second question, where does he, the Antichrist, come from? Wow. Two hints. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 tells us he comes out of the sea. Does that mean he's like a fish, a merman, or something like that? No. No. I don't think it does anyways. I've never thought of that before right now. So the sea, in the Bible, unless it's specific, it's a reference to the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea surrounds those countries like Israel, Turkey, and so forth, Greece. There in Europe, the Mideast and Europe. The sea in the Bible is also a reference to people. So I believe it's both of these things. He's going to come out of the territory that is somewhere around the Mediterranean Sea and out of the sea of the masses of people. I have a friend of mine that's convinced that the Antichrist is going to be an alien. I don't know. He explains it to me. I think, wow, you're pretty believable. But I don't know. I just don't see that here. So sorry. But I believe it's one of those. We can get a little bit more specific, right? So around the Mediterranean, the land there, Europe or the Mideast, and also from the people. Daniel gives us more specifics. Daniel chapter 9, verse 26. And the people of the prince who is to come. The prince who is to come, I should have put that in parentheses, is the Antichrist. The people of the future prince shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Who was that? Who were the people who destroyed the city and the sanctuary? It was the Romans who destroyed the city and the sanctuary in 70 A.D. He is the prince who is going to come from these people, all right? So here's the big question. People come to me and they say, Pastor Tom, I've read where Walid Shubat or Joel Richardson, Walid was here speaking one night a few years back, and he says that the Antichrist comes out of the eastern leg of the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. And but others say it's the western leg of the Roman Empire that the Antichrist is going to come from. So does the Antichrist come from the eastern leg of the Roman Empire or the western leg of the Roman Empire? They both surround the Mediterranean Sea, both the lands do. Hence, the eastern leg of the Roman Empire was headquartered in Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul, the capital of Turkey. And the western leg was obviously in Rome. I believe it's Rome. It's the western leg of the Roman Empire, and it's pretty simple in my mind because the eastern leg of the Roman Empire was not strong at all for a long time after 70 A.D. And I know, like Walid has said, but it's the indigenous people of that land that were raised up that destroyed the area of Jerusalem. So they wouldn't have come from Europe. They would have been the people from like Turkey or something like that. They were more indigenous to that territory, Lebanon or Israel, that were raised up. Well, it was Titus the Roman who led it. It's Titus the Roman who's given the credit as being the one who destroyed the city and the sanctuary. Titus was a Roman. He's from the Western Roman Empire. So I look at it, and to me, it is the Western Roman Empire from that destroyed the city, and out of the Western Roman Empire, a revived Western Roman Empire, will the Antichrist come out of. Some form of a European Union. Of this empire that's coming, Daniel tells us in Daniel chapter 2 with his statue that Nebuchadnezzar sees, and he says, hey, Daniel, give me the interpretation, and he sees this massive statue. And Daniel says, you, Nebuchadnezzar, are the head of gold. Then he goes through the various world empires, the Medo-Grecian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Grecian Empire, the Roman Empire. And then he gets to the feet. It's the feet of iron and the feet of clay. And it's the legs of iron, the Roman Empire. The feet are standing on that Roman Empire. Feet of iron and feet of clay. Daniel says, partly weak, partly strong. I'll tell you right now what we see in America and Europe. The two combined. We see partly strong and partly weak. I read an article the other day. There's no military in the entire world that is as powerful as the United States of America. Things are changing in that regard, but we are still the most powerful, the strongest nation in the world. In fact, when you look at it across the board, in pure strength, we still are, although things are changing. But at the same time, there's a great weakness that America has. Europe has some strength, but Europe has some major weaknesses too, due to politics. And I also believe due to a division over who the God of heaven is where the greatest weakness comes, but partly strong and partly weak. We see that in the Western world right now. So let's move on from here. Where does he come from? I believe the revived Roman Empire, which will be the revived Western Roman Empire, a European Union of sorts. Number 3, what is he like? What is his personality? This is real simple. You can read about these, find them. He'll be charismatic. He will be charming and smooth. He will be pompous. He will be deceitful. He will be a liar. All of these things. When I look at a charismatic, the most charismatic individual that ever walked this earth up to this point has been the Lord Jesus Christ. Most powerful individual too. However, he wasn't a liar or deceitful or pompous or his only charm was just in who he was God. But you look at him, you look at the one who is coming, he's going to be extremely charismatic. It will be the wow factor. People will just have it for this individual who's going to come. And then once he's possessed by the Antichrist, it's look out. But the devil is the father of lies, right? And this guy's a liar. Not only is the devil his father, the devil will be in him. But the world right now is fascinated with charisma, fascinated with charm. They don't care about lies. You know, you do your circuit with the Hollywood people, and it's not just the United States. You'll see other dignitaries from throughout the world that want to come and run through Hollywood and get on the big screen and do all these crazy things. You think, what happened to the kings and the queens and the presidents and the prime ministers? Where's the Winston Churchills and that kind of thing? But things have certainly changed. But it's all indicative of the time we live in and where we are rapidly going. This is the way it is going to be, and people are going to be very accepting of this. So what does he do? I will tell you what he does. Ready? He fights wars. Revelation chapter 13, verse 4, we read it just a few minutes ago. Who is able to make war with him? In other words, man, he starts a war and nobody can beat him. This guy is awesome. That's what people will say of him. Who's able to make war with him? However, Daniel lets us know that he's not able to defeat everybody. Did you know that? He's not able to defeat everybody. Daniel chapter 11. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him. This is the Antichrist. And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. And he shall enter their countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land. And many countries shall be overthrown. So he's moving, right? He's making war. Nobody can stop him. But these shall escape from his hand. Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. Those are all located currently in Jordan. But news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Glorious holy mountain is Jerusalem. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. So he's not going to be able to beat everybody. And he's not going to have everybody liking him. You saw the king of the north, the king of the south were against him. News from the east, news from the west. There's various people that are against him. A lot of it appears to be, in my studies in the past from Daniel chapter 11, it appears to be a lot of it is the people who live over in the Mideast are against him. The east, the north, the south, and the west over in that area, they are coming against him. We move on from there. He fights wars. He also persecutes the Jews, and it is ugly. Daniel chapter 11. But the people, the Jews, who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand, that be Jewish believers during the tribulation, shall instruct many. Yet for many days they, that be the Jews, shall fall by sword and by flame. We've been seeing the sword and flame with ISIS, haven't we? By the sword and flame, by captivity and by plundering. Another passage, Daniel chapter 12. At that time, this is speaking of the time of the end, there shall be a time of trouble for the Jews, such as never was since there was a nation. Jeremiah describes this time, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it, and it is the time of Jacob's trouble. Revelation chapter 12. tells us of the time of Jacob's trouble. What is the time of Jacob's trouble? It's the time when the Antichrist sits on the throne, and the Jews, the faithful Jews, 1/3 of them recognized, oh no, we have worshipped, we've made a deal with the wrong man. We made a peace covenant with the wrong man. They recognize at that moment, God takes their blinders off, and they recognize, oh no, this is the Antichrist that the Bible speaks of. This is the beast, the one we made a deal with, and he seeks to persecute the Jews. We know from Zechariah chapter 13, verse 8, that 2/3 of the Jews are going to be annihilated, and it appears by him. They're going to be wiped out, but 1/3 of them shall escape. Many believe it's at that point that they escape to the area of Petra, but he's going to persecute the Jews. What else will he do? He will persecute the saints. Revelation chapter 14, verse 7 tells us he will make war with the saints and he will overcome them. Well, what saints are these? I thought there was a rapture of the church. There is a rapture of the church. The rapture of the church takes place before the Great Tribulation. Well, who are these saints? These are people that come to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ during the tribulation period. You've heard that before. If you're here, you receive Christ, and suddenly you're demanded to take the mark of the beast, and you don't take it, guess what? Off with your head. That's what that is speaking of right there. He's going to persecute the saints. What else? He persecutes anyone that does not receive his mark. Revelation chapter 13, verse 5 tells us anyone that does not worship the image of the beast will be killed. What else do we have? What's he a king over? He is a king over, I believe, the Western world. Or I already established that with my view on being a king over the Western world, the Antichrist rising up out of a revived Roman Empire out of Europe. But in the last days, there is two different divisions of the world. There are 10 kingdoms with 10 kings, but at the same time, God has divided the world into 4 corners: the north, the south, the east, and the west. The north would be Russia and Turkey alliance in the Bible. South would be Africa. East would be Asia, China, India, etc. And by the way, in Revelation chapter 16, this is bonus points for y'all. In Revelation chapter 16, the kings from the east and their troops come over the dried up Euphrates River, and it's at the place of Armageddon. The Antichrist comes there. It appears to meet the kings of the east to make war against them, but then they turn their attention to the Lord Jesus Christ. Lord Jesus Christ is coming from heaven. The kings from the east and their armies come over the Euphrates River, and the Antichrist marches toward Armageddon too, all at the same time. But Jesus is coming, and guess what? We're with him. I've read it in Revelation. We're with him, and that's going to be good. But in that place, the kings of the east are there. And I've heard it said over and over and over again by some very good Bible prophecy teachers, and I disagree with them. In fact, maybe I'll see what Don Stewart thinks about this next week. But they will tell me, and you hear it all over the radio, that China, this is the kings of the east from China that march over the Euphrates River with an army of 200 million men. Has anybody ever heard that? Okay, that's a lot of you. Okay, here's the deal. I have a problem with that, and the reason why is because China can field an army of 200 million men, from what I understand. There's some major logistics problems with getting 200 million people to any place for a war like that. But the problem with that is in Revelation chapter 9, there are 200 million demonic-like creatures that come out of the Euphrates River. I believe Revelation chapter 9 is very specific to demons, 200 million demons that come out of the Euphrates River. Later on, at the very, very, very end of the tribulation, the kings from the east march over a dried up Euphrates River. The Antichrist is there, and Jesus is leading us as we come back at that point. I do not believe, just for the record, if you're one of those who believes China is going to field an army of 200 million men and the Bible teaches that, I don't believe the Bible teaches that. I'm just saying that, and that's my bonus points for you. So that's all I'm saying, because now I just ticked off like 25 of you. But when you get to heaven, you'll find out that I'm right, and you'll say, wow, Pastor Tom was right about that. North, south, east, and the west. The western world is the world be divided up into 4 corners. There's 10 kingdoms, but 4 corners by God's perspective. And the western kingdom will be Europe and America, could be all of North America. What else will the Antichrist be king over? The Western world, because not everybody's going to be in favor of the Antichrist. China is not going to be in favor of the Antichrist. Do you think any leader over in China right now is thinking, wow, I wish somebody out of the West would rise up, that'd be super charismatic, that we could just follow? It ain't going to happen. So get that out of your head. He's going to be leader over the Western world, wanting to dominate the entire world. But with that, he is also king over the New World Order. Now, what about the New World Order? What do we have? We have the Illuminati. We have the Knights Templar. We have the Scottish Rite of the Masonic Order. We have the Federal Reserve, the League of Nations, the Council on Foreign Relations, the United Nations, the Club of Rome, the Bilderberg Group, and the list goes on and on. So I'm just going to key in on one of those for a minute. Let me read this to you. This is from Lambert Dolphin and Ron Graff in their explanation on the Council of Foreign Relations, because we all hear about the Bilderberg Group and the Federal Reserve and those conspiracy things, right? So I want you to think of this on the CFR, or the Council of Foreign Relations. Lambert Dolphin writes, World War I lasted from 1914 to 1918. The United States was involved during the last 2 years. Woodrow Wilson's Secretary of State, Colonel Edward Mandell House, had supported the Federal Reserve Act and planned the League of Nations. He favored allowing Americans to enter this war in the hope of establishing a new world order of peace and security. Colonel House was also a prime minister in the formation of the Council on Foreign Relations in 1919. Virtually all of the literature about a conspiracy in the last 30 years has mentioned the Council of Foreign Relations as a key element. Most people know little about the organization because they are very private. Their agenda has been supranational, above or beyond national interests, from the beginning. He continues, most of the presidents and nearly all secretaries of state in our generation have belonged to the CFR. Even the strong Christian presidents have generally filled their cabinets with CFR members. George Bush was a good example of this. The CFR has several branches. They are the Institute for Pacific Relations in New York, the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London. There's a center in Paris. There's a center in Hamburg. But the CFR is now so old that many other organizations have been formed to carry out their objectives. Their network of influences controlled by these people, including the major news networks, is unbelievable. The admitted goal of the CFR is to establish the Constitution and replace our once independent republic with a world government. Did you catch that? Is to replace the Constitution. Do we see that happening? And establish a world government. This is the last paragraph. Some of their purposes are hair-raising. For instance, study number 7, CFR position, paper dated November 25, 1959, stated its purpose was to advocate the building of a new international order which, listen to this, must be responsive to world aspirations for peace, including states labeling themselves as socialists. Today, we have become complacent about this alarming goal, but we should be all the more upset because the U.S. is making strides toward their socialist agenda. So we look at these things, and these are real groups that are out there, and you have the conspiracy theorists that are out there, but we know from Revelation chapter 6 where we've seen, man, these things are going to go this direction, and it appears that men are leading the charge. I'm almost wrapped up here, but let me go on with this. What does the Antichrist demand? He demands to be worshiped in the temple. Look at Revelation chapter 13, beginning in verse 15. He, the Antichrist, was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So he was granted power to give breath to. Who's that? The false prophet was granted power to give this power to the image of the beast, an image that is made of the Antichrist. Did you get that? False prophet gives basically life to this image of the Antichrist. He causes, verse 16, all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or 4 heads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast, the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. So how does this play out, and when does it play out, this worship of the image of the beast and the Antichrist and the whole mark of the beast? Well, I believe it plays out in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where the Antichrist sits in the temple and demands to be worshipped as God, where 1/3 of the Jews flee to Petra and the other 2/3 are killed. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, then the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. By the way, only 2 people called son of perdition in the Bible. You know who they are? The Antichrist and Judas. You guys are sharp. Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he, the Antichrist, sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So he's going to demand to be worshipped. Now with that, when there is a requirement to receive the mark of the beast, I have had this question many, many, many times. Pastor Tom, I went to the doctor, I had surgery, I have an RFID chip that's been implanted in me. I got this. Now the technology is tattoos, like RFID tattoos and things, which Mark would fit very nicely with the tattoo, the name Mark of the beast. He asked me, have I received the mark of the beast? Because now it can be tracked, and you know, my dog's chipped. Does my dog receive the mark of the beast? These are real questions, right? Revelation chapter 13 is very, very, very clear. The mark of the beast is in accordance with worship of the Antichrist during the tribulation period. It is a conscious decision that you make. Yes, I give my allegiance to him. Let me give you my right hand. Oh, wait, better yet, put it right here. He is the one I'm showing my allegiance to. So if you got some kind of medical device on you, you worry you got the mark of the beast. You don't have it. I mentioned this morning, my son has a phone and his prefix is 666. And people freak out over that. I thought it was kind of cool. I said, listen, don't be superstitious. I mean, I also mentioned this morning, I know of Christians, $6.66 on their change. They won't take it. I'll take it. I'll be glad to take it. You have $666 you want to give me? I'll take it. Listen, listen, don't be superstitious about these things. You have not received the mark of the beast, all right? And I'm not one that believes in like this bad luck kind of stuff. And it was a great teaching moment for my son with that phone with 666. Kind of cool. You should try it sometime. But the technology is here. Check this out. You got to hear this, right? We have the technology to track people. Oh, let me show you this first. Talk about the image of the beast. You know who this is? This is President Erdogan of Turkey giving this massive speech on why they need to recapture Jerusalem. That's like this crazy hologram. That's kind of creepy looking, isn't it? But when you think of the image of the beast, you kind of, you know, that's pretty creepy. Anyways, let me get back to this. Government's eye new stingray detecting system. Now, you can't buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast, right? So we understand how technology is right now. You and I are being tracked. I was talking with a friend yesterday, and he had some old phone. And I looked at his phone, and I said, man, that is so cool. There is no way you can ever be tracked with that phone. And he said, you're right. However, everything else I do is tracked, so it really doesn't matter. And he's right. We're being tracked. You buy gas, you're being tracked. You know what? It doesn't really matter what you're doing. But anyways, everything's going into a database. Google has more info on you than the government has. But listen to this stingray system. Espionage driving governments to protect their cell communications. A new system designed to detect and track IMSI catchers, commonly referred to as stingrays, is grabbing the attention of Western governments as revelations of widespread cellular surveillance continue to emerge. This is crazy. IMSI catchers, known best for their use by law enforcement, are suitcase-sized devices that mimic cell towers in order to capture anything from a mobile phone's current location to text and voice data. That's nuts. So you're walking down the street, somebody's got their suitcase over here. They're collecting everything in your phone. Recent stories on the subject have revealed extensive and unwarranted use by police departments across the country, with agencies such as the FBI, U.S. Marshal Service spearheading a campaign to deceive prosecutors and judges on the technology. Both governments and the public alike became increasingly aware of the technology's pervasiveness late last year, when the security experts detected as many as 18 IMSI catchers while traveling through Washington, D.C. So you look at this, listen, the technology is here. And, years ago, people were worried about their their social security card being the mark of the beast. It's not. But the technology is ready to go. Google's got it all. Listen, Facebook has it all. Our stuff is everywhere. The government has it all. All it takes is just something to happen, which we're going to get into as we wrap up. This is the last thing. The Antichrist is going to demand a cashless society. This last thing. You cannot buy or sell unless you have the mark, right? So Mark Hitchcock notes, economic upheaval always opens the door for massive change. Political opportunists take full advantage of desperate times to seize power and implement their vision. This was true in the past, it is true today, and it will still hold true in the future. A coming worldwide economic disaster will no doubt be a key part of the matrix of events that sets the stage for the one-world economy of the Antichrist. Just as with Hitler's rise to power, runaway inflation will pave the way for the Antichrist and his one-world cashless economy. History will repeat itself. People, desperate for the basic necessities of life, will yearn for anyone who can provide real answers and real solutions. They will gladly dispense with the delay of democratic processes and the normal channels of government. They will accept anyone who can stop the misery. Wow. Whether we like it or not, we are seeing the stage being set right now. Revelation 6, which we looked at, the economy is going to tank, and it appears out of that, all of this is going to be implemented. But I have to close with this, because this is going to really set it all straight in your head. This article here, HSBC fears worldwide recession with no lifeboats left, fearing worldwide. Listen, the United States is in better shape economically than pretty much all the rest of the world, just for the record, except for maybe Israel. All financial hell is about to break loose. Secret meeting in London to end cash. Let me read this to you. This is crazy. Economist Martin Armstrong claims there is a secret meeting to end cash set to take place in London before the end of the month, involving representatives from the ECB and the Federal Reserve. The end of the month, I believe he's referring to this month, which would be today. Armstrong, who is known for successfully predicting the 1987 Black Monday crash as well as 1998 Russian financial collapse, expressed his shock that no news outlet has reported on this upcoming conference. He writes, I find it extremely perplexing that I have been the only one to report of the secret meeting in London. Kenneth Rogoff of Harvard University, William Boutier, the chief economist at Citigroup, will address the central banks to advocate the elimination of all cash to bring to fruition the day when you cannot buy or sell anything without government approval, writes Armstrong. Now listen to this, it gets crazy. We better keep one eye open at night for this birth of a cashless society that is coming in much faster than expected. Why the secret meeting? Something does not smell right here, he says. Discussions and moves toward banning cash have repeatedly cropped up in recent weeks. William Boutier, who Armstrong claims is speaking at the secret meeting, recently advocated abolishing cash altogether in order to solve the world's central bank's problems with negative interest rates. Continues. Last year, Kenneth Rogoff also called for abolishing physical currency in order to stop tax evasion and illegal activity. And it continues from there, striking a similar tone. I promise I'm almost done. 20 minutes or so. It's not that much. No, it's not. I'm almost done. Striking a similar tone, former Bank of England economist Jim Leavis penned an article for the London Telegraph earlier this month in which he said a cashless society would only be achieved by forcing everyone to spend only by electronic means from an account held at a government-run bank, which would be monitored or even directly controlled by the government. Continues. Some of you have been reading about this with banks in the U.S. Big banks in both the U.K. and the U.S. are already treating the withdrawal or depositing of moderately large amounts of cash as suspicious activity. Reports emerged in March of how the Justice Department is ordering bank employees to consider calling the police on customers who withdraw $5,000 of cash or more. Meanwhile, in France, new measures are set to come into force in September, which will restrict French citizens from making cash payments over 1,000 euros. Armstrong notes banning cash in order to eviscerate what little economic freedom people have left to avoid disastrous Keynesian central bank policy is nothing short of economic totalitarianism. As it goes on with Armstrong suggests that financial police could enforce these new laws by searching people on trains if they've got too much cash, passing through places like France or other places in Europe to see if they're transporting cash, which they will now seize. He continues on this. In the mind of an economic tyrant, the Antichrist, banning cash represents the holy grail, writes Michael Krieger. Forcing the plebs onto a system of digital fiat currency transactions offers total control via a seamless tracking of all transactions in the economy and the ability to block payments if an uppity citizen dares to get out of line. Isn't that crazy? And you read this, and this is what we know when we see these things begin to happen. What do we know? Look up, for your redemption draws near. Amen? Father, we